there, lovelies. So welcome to today's episode where we are going to be talking about a much asked after subject, which is barking at other dogs. This is a Chihuahua superpower. This is something that the breed is absolutely perfected. Barking at other dogs on sight is something that I get asked about an awful lot. So today I thought we'd have a look at the why behind the problem. Why is your Chihuahua barking at every other dog? Why is your walk a stressful nightmare? Why can't your Chihuahua just go, I see that dog over there, but it's none of my business. So this is what we're going to be breaking down today, looking at the why behind why your Chihuahua is barking at other dogs, and I will also give you some tips on how to deal with it. So before we look at why your Chihuahua is barking and break that down, we need to understand what it isn't. Now, a lot of people tend to put labels on this dog's behavior, and I kind of get that, because when your dog is doing something that you just don't quite understand what's going on, it's just natural to put a label on it. Now, some of these labels are fairly harmless, but some of these labels can cause our dogs problems. One thing labels do is they disempower you as an owner to actually take charge of the situation and do something about it. So let's have a look at some of the labels that we typically come across whenever we're dealing with reactivity in our Chihuahuas. Now, one of the most common ones is, he thinks he's a Rottweiler. That is not the case, okay? And also it's a bit unfair to Rotties because they are actually lovely dogs. Your dog does not think he's a Rottweiler. And as we go into explaining why your dog is barking at other dogs, you'll see why that's not the case. Another good one is, he's protecting me, okay? Now I hear this an awful lot. Your dog is not protecting you, okay? Your dog is not trying to save you from approaching this other dog. Your dog is not guarding you, okay? You need to understand that when your dog is in this massive emotional state where he's barking like crazy at other dogs, probably doesn't even know you're there, okay? So drop the idea that your dog is trying to protect you. Another one we hear is that he's trying to dominate the other dog. No, he isn't, okay? He really is not thinking that I'm going to go over there and I am going to teach that dog who's boss, okay? Again, these labels are coming from very, very old, out-of-date training myths and behavior myths, which still just seem to circulate even in 2025. Another thing I hear a lot around reactivity is, he's a rescue. So your dog is bark, bark, bark at another dog, and he's sorry, he's a rescue. Kind of believing that the fact that you rescued your Chihuahua and you don't know what happened to him in the past kind of absolves you of these behavior problems. And not only that, it kind of disempowers, again, the owner to do something about it. So all of these reasons that we hear over and over again, these labels that we apply to our dog, we need to just drop them. We need to look at what our dog needs, why they are doing and barking the way they are, and what can we do to help them. So why are our Chihuahuas barking at other dogs on sight when you're out and about? So a key concept of why your Chihuahua barks at other dogs is because your Chihuahua finds the presence of the other dog concerning. He has seen that other dog. He has asked himself, what does the presence of that other dog mean for me? And he has decided that it's bad. And he has dropped into this barking, lunging. He could be spinning on the end of the lead. And he is what we call an avoidance behavior. Now, this behavior is driven by the flight or flight system, okay? It's driven by the amygdala. He is completely working on instincts, and he is barking at that other dog to get that other dog, because it's a threat, to stay away. Now, we kind of think to ourselves, okay, so if you're worried about the presence of that other dog, why do you not just stay under the radar? Why do you not just be nice and quiet and not draw attention to yourself. But that's not the way dogs roll. When they are worried about something, they will bark at it. They will quite often chase it. They might run into like an area within the dog's zone and just start to aggress the dog. You see them jumping around like a jack in a box, barking at the other dog. And sometimes they'll take that one step further and they'll get in this other dog's face and aggress this other dog. That's obviously if they're off lead. If they're on lead and you're walking down the street, they might just start barking and lunging and pulling on the lead, which is kind of what we're used to. So this barking at other dogs is based on your dog finds the presence of that other dog worrying, and they are barking at them to stay away. Now, this could also be the same as if your dog was really good with other dogs and he was frustrated and wanted to go and play with the other dog. Now, while that might be the case for some larger breeds, that's not generally the way Chihuahuas roll. So they do find other dogs concerning. So while that could be the barking and the lunging could be frustration because I want to go and get involved, I want to go and play with that other dog, I want to go and visit that other dog, quite often that's not the case for Chihuahuas. It's driven by anxiety, and the barking and lunging is a fear-based reaction. So the other key concepts that back up this, I find the presence of this dog worrying, is rehearsal and triggers. Okay, so they kind of all drive each other. So the more your dog rehearses barking at these other dogs, the more your dog will bark at other dogs. It becomes a habit or a neural pathway. I see that other dog, I drop into avoidance and I start barking. And then this escalates and is driven by triggers. So sometimes your dog will see another dog and he'll start barking at that other dog, or because this has now become such an established behavior, he starts to predict that there's going to be another dog. There could be no other dog there. There could be no other problem. It could be a piece of paper blowing across the field or whatever. But I see movement. I am concerned about that movement, so I will bark at it. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of triggers, rehearsal, barking, triggers, rehearsal, barking. So think of arousal level as your dog's emotional temperature. The higher this is, the less inclined, the less calm your dog is. Now, we all know that if you're in a high state yourself, if you're in an emotional state yourself, we do not make good decisions. And the same thing it can be said of our dogs. So when they're in a high state of arousal, their thinking is being driven by their amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for flight or flight. The amygdala is the one that's going danger, 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 and will constantly drive this barking and avoidance behavior. So Chihuahuas are actually quite a high excitement breed anyway. They are kind of a dog that does tend towards hypervigilance. So you can imagine that the dog comes out of your front door and is instantly on it looking for trouble because their arousal is high. They have kind of predicted that they're going for a walk, and their anxiety or excitement, doesn't matter which, because they both have the same output behavior, has gone up. And they have tipped from their thinking brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is calmness, which is make good decisions, to their emotional brain, the amygdala, which is kind of like danger, danger, danger. And every time they see something, and it doesn't even have to be another dog, they start this avoidance behavior. So your dog's high arousal level can start before you even get out the door. It can start with just putting the harness on. It can start with you just getting dressed to go out for a walk. The dogs are extremely good at predicting what's going to happen next. And if what's going to happen next is likely to create anxiety, then you can see before you even get out the door, the dog's emotional state has changed and they are going to start looking for trouble, probably when there isn't even any on the horizon. Now, dogs can be active copers or they can be passive copers, okay, depending, and kind of guess on the personality of the dog. An active coping dog is a dog who does something when they feel under threat. So they might bark, they might get their teeth out, they might lunge and spin at the other dog, they might aggress the other dog. So active copers will do something, generally an avoidance behavior, when they feel threatened. And a passive coper is a dog that's more shut down, is a dog who is going to probably stiffen, is they might try and hide. Some dogs will roll on their back and show their belly in a kind of like an appeasement stance. Now, while Chihuahuas can be passive copers, as a breed, they do have a tendency towards active coping. They do have a tendency towards, I see that, I don't like it, so I'm going to come out swinging and I'm going to drop into avoidance to get that perceived threat to stay away. So let's have a look at how this behavior can start. Now, one of the biggest issues that Chihuahuas have is the narrative around socialization. Okay. And if you have a small young puppy, this is where you need to take note. Okay. The old narrative around all dog socialization causes an awful lot more problems than it solves. The old narrative will suggest that while your puppy is really young, generally the people use like 16 weeks as the go-to date, that if you don't do all this by 16 weeks, you are doomed and your dog is just not going to thrive. I need you to park that. Okay. So what happens is you get told that your dog needs to go out before they're 16 weeks old. They need to be introduced to loads of other dogs. They need to be handled by loads of people. They need to go and see lots of novelty. And if you don't do this by the time they're 16 weeks old, then, as I said, your dog is going to be absolutely doomed to a life of reactivity. When in fact, it's actually doing this which is going to cause your reactivity or can contribute to your reactivity. So if you did socialize your dog the way everybody tells you to, and you are dealing with Chihuahua barking, don't feel too bad about it, because you are just been given some advice which is like fairly out of date now. But while it's out of date, it still does go round and round and round in the dog training narrative. Another thing that can contribute to your Chihuahua reactivity, or can put them on this reactivity pathways, is puppy classes or training classes. Now, this is true of a lot of breeds, but they can be overwhelming. They can be just too much for the average dog. But when you're only 10 inches high, they can be just too much. They can just be too overwhelming. So your dog is probably going to already be in a high state of arousal because they're going out. They're going to be, you're putting your dog in a situation that really have the skills for, and there's lots and lots of other dogs. Your dog is that may get visited by another dog. They might get barked at by another dog. Then you're going to find that that goes in as a flashbulb memory, and voila, you have your dog barking at other dogs on sight. You also have to ask yourself about puppy classes. What is your dog actually going to be learning? How much is your dog going to be learning, considering they're in a really high state of arousal? And it's kind of like trying to teach a child that's having a tantrum. Okay, they're not in the right headspace. They are not in the right part of their brain to actually learn anything. So my advice would be, give any puppy socialization classes or puppy training classes a huge miss, because traditionally Chihuahuas don't really cope with them, and you can find yourself creating the exact issues that you are going to be trying to stop. So what can we do? What can we do if our Chihuahua is barking at other dogs? The best thing that you can teach your dog, the best type of socialization, is you teach your dog that other dogs are none of their business. If you can do this from being a puppy, that's great. But you may find that you need to reintroduce this concept to an older dog. So what can that actually look like? How can we make that happen? What we're looking for is your Chihuahua is out and about, and the center of their world is you. We don't want them scanning the environment looking for trouble. We want them to, I see that dog over there, but that's none of my business. This is true socialization. This is confidence. This is your dog able to say, I see you, but you are not a threat. I see you. You are none of my business. I don't care about you. And that is the key to getting our dog to ignore other dogs and to be more confident and joyful on their walks. So, in the same way, your Chihuahua learnt to bark at other dogs by growing a neural pathway that says, when I see another dog, I bark at them. We can undo the behavior. We can teach them that when I see another dog, it's none of my business. It is just a new neural pathway which is going to take over the old one. But before we can do that, before we can grow a new neural pathway, we have to damp down the old one. You cannot learn a new behavior while you're still, the old one is still firing. You cannot stop smoking if you're still smoking. Okay, it's the same principle. So we want to damp down that neural pathway, and we need to grow a new one. So how are we going to do that? So first of all, if you've got a puppy, it's much, much better. Prevention is like always better than cure. So if you're working with a puppy, before you start taking them out on the walks where they're going to encounter other dogs, etc., you are going to teach them some skills at home. So you are going to work on their confidence at home. You are going to work on their tolerance of novelty at home. And then you will introduce the environment in tiny, tiny steps as the dog's skills grow. So you are not just dumping a malleable brain into situations that they have no understanding of, that then can create this huge emotional rush or this need to shut down. But if you have an older dog that you're trying to rehabilitate, then that is slightly different. Okay. Now that is probably another video in itself, and it is quite a complicated behavior to unpick, but I'm going to give you some basic tips so that you've got something to work on. But if you want a guided, helpful approach to stopping and reducing your Chihuahua's reactivity to other dogs, then do check out Chihuahua School, where I will teach you everything that you need to know in order to rebuild your walk and rebuild your Chihuahua's confidence. So, tip number one, okay, for reducing Chihuahua barking at other dogs is you need to prevent rehearsal. You need to damp down this neural pathway that says, I see that other dog, I need to bark at it. So how are we going to do that? There are various ways. One of the most obvious ways is you stop taking your dog out for a walk so that they are rehearsing that behavior, and you replace that walk by playing games with your dog at home. And these games are going to help grow that new response and that new neural pathway. And as your dog's skills grow, exactly the same for the puppy, we introduce the environment in much, much smaller steps. But we've given the dog some skills, and we've given the dog some tools that they need so that their arousal level is down and they can make better decisions. So tip number 2 is we build the dog's skills for the situation and not in it. And what I mean by that is when your dog is having an utter meltdown, that is not the place to try and teach them something. Okay, again, use the analogy of the child having a tantrum. Would you try and teach that child to tie their shoelaces? No, you wouldn't, because they're in the wrong part of their brain. Okay, we need a dog. In order to teach a dog something new, they need to be calm. And if they are having a meltdown at another dog, they are not calm and they are not going to be able to learn. And this is often the why so much training fails, is because people are not training in the right place. We teach our dogs the skills they need to cope when they're calm so that they can make better decisions when things get spicy. So tip number 3. So your dog is having a meltdown at another dog. So your dog is in flight or flight. Both of those emotional states are about movement. Okay, if your dog was going to run away, that's about movement. If your dog is going to go in for a fight and get aggressive, that is about movement. So what we don't want to do is sit our dog down and try and get them to focus on you, and be really still while they're in this emotional state. So that was a doorbell. So now I've kind of forgot what tip I'm on. Um, Movement. So when your dog is in flight or fight, it's about movement. Getting your dog to sit there and be still and stare at you or whatever is going to be quite punishing for them, okay? Because everything in their body, they want to move. So rather than have your dog still, teach them a game that moves them away. Okay, now that can be really simple. That could be like a little zigzag run game. So, and you teach this to your dog when they're calm so that the cue is embedded. Okay, neural pathway. The cue is embedded. So when you use your cue word, the dog knows what it's going to do. So if you see another dog and your dog is going to get a little bit aggressive and get a little bit worried, then you use your cue word and you might just start moving your dog away from that interaction. The more you do that, the more the dog will get used to being able to disengage from that other dog that they're staring at and that their anxiety is going up about. So teach a game that's based in movement. We've got, you could teach a little zigzag run game. We've also got a really good game on our YouTube called Rewind, where your body moving backwards. I use this a lot. This is a good game for if you're walking down like a path or something and you've got dogs coming towards you and or whatever, and you want your dogs to disengage. If I just start walking backwards, my dogs will just fold and follow me. So that's a really useful one to teach, and that is on our YouTube channel. And I'll put a link to that in the comments in the text below. So it's about movement. Don't leave your dog still and don't leave them staring, and don't try and get them to focus on you when they are in this high state of arousal. Just get them moving. Just get them away from the situation. So I think I'm on tip 4. So sometimes it's not appropriate for you to move and appropriate for you to run. So teach your dog a scavenge. Teach your dog how to find something in the grass. So if they are, so if you use a cue, so find it is a cue for my dogs. If I say to my dogs, find it, they will start looking for something in the grass. So if I want them to disengage from a dog that might be looking at them, or that they might be looking at themselves, I point to the ground and I go, find it. They will instantly start scavenging in the ground. Now, why that's a really good game is because it puts the dog into a seeking mindset, okay? Because dogs have a seeking mindset is a positive mindset. It's a thriving mindset because they're scavenging, and dogs like to scavenge. So find it is a kind of a game that's going to flip them from really high anxiety into, oh, this is fun, this is good fun. So teaching them the cue to find something in the grass is really, really useful. Okay, I'm going to go with 5. I think I'm on 5. Teach your dog a forward movement cue. Okay, so for us, it's walk on. So if we're out and about, now Arlo is probably our chippiest Chihuahua. He never used to be like that. He's just been targeted so many times by off-lead dogs that he's become quite anxious, and he's become quite worried when he's out. And he's kind of very quick to sound the alarm if he thinks he can ignore another dog, and that's taken some work. But if another dog looks at him, or he gets the impression that another dog might come over, then he drops into avoidance very, very quickly. So we teach him a forward. I'm basically telling him what to do, okay, and walk on. So we're out and about. He might see another dog over there, and he'll check me, what do you want me to do? And I'll just walk on, okay? None of your business, bud. Walk on. And that is giving him a cue that he knows what he needs to do. So just walk on, and he will then he he just knows what to do. There's no other way of putting that. Okay. So teaching your dog a forward walk on cue can be really, really useful. Tip number 6 I'm going to go with is teach your dog to stay with you. Okay, so build value in having a zone around you where your dog stays with you. So many of the problems with dogs in parks is because dogs do not stay with their owners. They perceive the value of the walk to be somewhere else. They scout the horizon and they're off over there investigating this or they're investigating that. And if they're investigating another dog who does not appreciate that, then this is where all of the trouble is starting. And this is absolutely certainly what happened to Arlo. So you teach your dog to stay with you. And if everybody did this, life would be so much easier in the parks, etc. So in order to do that, we have a free challenge on our Chihuahua School page, which is called the Focus Challenge, and I will put the link below. And that helps you teach a proximity zone. Okay, so your dog has more value in staying with you than they do have in going off and exploring the environment. That is huge. Okay, my dogs don't leave my side unless I give them I'll walk on cue. So if I'm out with them, they stay with me, even off lead. They stay with me unless I have decided that it's safe and that there's nothing else going on, that they can just go off a little bit and do dog stuff. And even then, they don't actually go that far. But we'll be out and about and the dogs will be with me, and then I'll go, okay, it's all right here, just walk on. And they will just zoom off and do some zoomies or whatever it is they want to do. So, but they do that when I've decided it's safe. And this is such a useful thing to teach a dog, especially if you have a dog that likes to swim. Could you know, you don't want your dog just running off and jumping into a river because they love it. You want your dog to go, can I go for a swim? Can I do that? And you go, okay, off you go. And you teach that as what we call a pre-mat cue or a command to walk on or go swim or whatever it is you want to be. So you teach your dog to stay with you within a proximity zone. And to teach that, you can join our free focus challenge. I will put the link to that in the text below. Okay. So if you want to know how to do that, then join us there. Okay, so last but not least, disengagement. Okay, so one of the things that dogs like to do is they stare. They see another dog, they go rigid and they stare. Prince does this. And he comes like this, and then he'll start staring at something. And then pretty often, 9 times out of 10, that stillness will be followed by barking and avoidance. So I'm staring at you, my arousal level's going up, and bang, off they go into avoidance. Now, interrupting that is super useful. Okay, so if you can just make a noise. So for my dogs, I don't carry a clicker because I just can't see the point. Just kind of make the noise with your mouth. I might go with mine, or I go pop pop. I don't use their names, okay, because I just use a noise, and the dogs know, because I've taught that when I make that noise, that there is more value in moving away with me. Okay, so teaching them to disengage from something that is likely to cause an explosion of behavior. Okay, so there are some basic tips that will help you at home get started on reducing your Chihuahuas barking at other dogs. It's absolutely a key piece of the puzzle is not working with your dog when they are in this high state of arousal, not trying to teach your dog when they're having a meltdown. So once we've actually taught these games to our dog, then what do we start to do next? We start to reintroduce the environment in what we call micro walks. So they are tiny little walks where and for Prince, that was just, we would go out on the front step, we would play a couple of little games, and then we would come back in again. Short and successful. And as his skill level grew, we would move him further on. So he might just go down to the end of the front lawn. He might go to the first lamppost in the street. And we would just build his ability to cope in tiny, tiny steps. And we are constantly employing little games where the dog is focusing on you and not the environment. So are there additional little games that you can teach your dog? Just to be giving them something to do would be little spins, little food catches, two paws up. These games are all on our YouTube channel. So when you take your dog out and to keep them focused on you, you might go, you just have some food, you might just be doing some little spins with them, or just some little catch games or whatever, because then the value is with you and it's not with the environment and what's happening at other places in the field. So I hope that's been useful. This is quite a long video, so I'm thank you for sticking with me this long. If this is not everything, okay, there's so much more we can do to help rehabilitate a Chihuahua who is struggling with the environment. If you want a guided approach to this, then do check out Chihuahua School, where I will teach you how to teach your dog to have the confidence to ignore other dogs, because there is so much more that we can do to help. So if you need some help, please just DM me. If you want more information, then please come back to me. That's all I've got for you today, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. If you found this useful, as ever, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Anyway, ta-ta for now. Bye.